What's going on, guys? Conservative Video Dipper here. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about why do I think the left like to use violence more than words, and what causes them to use more violence than words. Now, I want to real quickly give viewer discretion because we are going to talk about graphic things and things that do happen around us and that are constantly happening. So if you are in a work environment or around children, or if you are sensitive to these types of topics, please do not watch, and watch at a different time, because we are going to talk about this. Because this is topics that do need to be talked about and that do need to be said. So, we will get into this. So why does the left feel like they need to use violence more than words? I think it has a lot to do with how, when it comes to the left and how we know how they have been lately and how they have acted and how they have started to form this more and more violent perpetual behavior, because they feel like they aren't being heard, which they know that they are being heard. They know that we hear them. We know that everyone can hear them. And they are aware that everyone can hear them and understand what they are saying. So it's not the fact that they're not being heard that makes them violent. So what is it? Is it maybe the mere sheer fact that they coincidentally don't want to be heard? They just would rather use violence to try to push their point across? Possibly. Maybe allegedly violence to them is more of a statement, kind of a exclamation point, if you will, to their way of thinking. That is probably a good point and probably how they think, but let's be honest. We know the left to be very animalistic, allegedly not very nice, not very tolerant, not very sympathetic, empathetic, or very understanding towards anyone, or not able to think and function like a normal human being without having these pent-up anger and the need to allegedly use violence as the means to make their point across, and that being what they do continuously and consecutively every day and every hour. That is how they feel that their point will be pushed across the board. So maybe it's not just that. Maybe it's just the mere fact that, who knows, maybe violence to them is something that they not only think will be the right answer, but maybe they don't care. Maybe they don't care what happens to them or anyone else. Maybe it's just the mere fact that they're selfish, and their selfishness and their alleged selfish ways are just honestly how they will always continue to be in life, because they're stuck in their own little ways and their own little bubbles, and they think that what they do is right, and again, we know that it's not right, and it's not correct, it's unlawful, and it's an alleged act of terrorism, and it's illegal, and it will not prove any point, but only cause legality problems, issues, and more division, divisive problems, and more issues around the world, and more anger, hurt, and destruction. So I guess if they don't care, then we can see that as being the biggest issue. Maybe that being part of it. But we could also say maybe it's a psychiatric issue. Not saying I'm a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist by any means, or do I play like one or act like one. But maybe could it be that? Could it be a psychosis issue? Could it be maybe something bipolar, schizophrenia, or borderline personality issue? Maybe pent-up anger, a lot of anger issues, daddy issues, mommy issues, a lot of issues from their childhood trauma, or whatever trauma in their life that they've gone through, maybe that they're finally using to be able to push out, and they're allowed to push it out because, well, now that everyone else on their side is allowed to use it, and they're allowed to use it, maybe that's just the way for them to exterminate that steam of anger and let that anger go. Could it be that? Who knows? But maybe there's more to it. Maybe there's more, like, narratives. What if not just the narrative is all of that, but also they use, or all of that could be rolled into one big narrative to silence allegedly just silence conservatives because they don't like what conservatives say, because conservatives speak truth, or conservatives or the opposing side points out that, well, the other side is doing certain particular things that the other side is doing that we all know that the other side doesn't like to have pointed out directly towards them, which kind of angers them. It makes them a little disgruntled, allegedly, and it shows their dismay towards anyone that points it out towards them, because, well, just kind of like an alleged child or a kid that gets told no. They don't like being told no. They don't like being told that you can't use violence. Instead, you have to use big boy words. But instead, they can't handle using big boy words because big boy words to them, well, no longer exists. It's a thing that maybe at one point they were able to do, but no longer are able to comprehend and able to rationalize, reason with. So maybe not just only that, but maybe there's that too. There's no rationalization with them, no reasoning with them, no trying to get them to understand that these things are wrong, and get them to understand that moral and compassionate ways are more better, and having a conversation is more better than using violence and alleged terrorism acts. But then again, it comes down to there is no moral compassion with these people. There is no talking. There is no rationalization. There is no words to be had with these people. Because these people will not use words. They will use violence and means of violence. Because violence is the only way they know best, apparently, to them. And it seems that violence is the only way that they feel happy. Schadenfreude is what they seem to know. Now, Schadenfreude is a German word for taking great pleasure in watching someone else have pain, or taking great pleasure in someone else's pain. And I've noticed that in the left a lot, that they love Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is something that they are well versatile in, and that they know very well about, and that they have found to take very great pleasure in. So Schadenfreude probably might be a good word to kind of describe how they feel when it comes to maybe them allegedly doing what they do. Because, yeah, it feels like they kind of do take pleasure in it. So I guess you could say maybe there is some very sick psychosis type thought that goes into it, that maybe a psychiatrist probably may agree with me here. I'm, again, not a psychiatrist or a doctor, but would look into something like this and they would probably say, yes, definitely Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is a perfect word for how this would describe them, because they take pleasure in pain of others, because it seems that's what they all tend to do, is take pleasure in pain in others. And it's sick, and it's very, very sick, twisted, demented pain type ways that they tend to do things. But let's not be mistaken, folks. When it comes to the left, Schadenfreude is not just a word that I use very lightly to describe the left when it comes to their habitual, perpetual acts of violence and the way that they are today. It describes them entirely. They are monsters. They are vicious. They are godless, fearless people. They are evil, vindictive. They don't care how far they will go. They will go to the rules of the world, to the ends of the world, and beyond that, and hell and back, to make sure that if anyone that disagrees with them is no longer going to have their say. Because God forbid that anyone has the right to have their First Amendment and disagree with their opinion. God forbid that you can question their judgment in what their political party is doing. God forbid that you can question their motives and their character and their lack of empathy and compassion for the humanity. God forbid that you can question anything that they do, say, because you really honestly can't, because they don't want you to, because that right there is Schadenfreude. They want you to suffer because they take pleasure in you suffering. if you question what they do or anything. But let's go back to a motive that I kind of brought up with psychosis. Because when you think about trauma and you think about all of these things that I've said, it could come also down to manipulation, down to narcissism. It could come down to brainwashing. It could come down to things like that. So could this be maybe a sign of narcissism? A controlled use of narcissism? I would probably say more than likely yes. This is a very high amount of narcissism that is used by the left, because they do use narcissism in a narcissistic control way to control people. Because they want control. No matter how much it makes the other person uncomfortable, or the other person is able to say, look, it's not about control. It's about a conversation that me and you could have, that we could agree to disagree. There's no need to control the conversation, but just be friendly and, have a civil discourse about politics. They want full control, because that is what a narcissist does. So, it is narcissism, to an extent. Alleged narcissism that stems from maybe multiple other things, like the media telling them that it's okay to do this. Maybe multiple other reasonings. But again, they don't reason. They're like zombies. They don't know how to reason. All they know how to do is let the media think for themselves, for them. They let the media think for them, because that is narcissism. That is letting the media control them. That is a narcissistic, toxic relationship. And they call us a cult. But what they don't see and understand is that we know this. We know this to be true. We know this to be what they do. Because this is the toxic trait of the left. Not just because of their violence and their screaming and their yelling and their constant confusion that they not only bring amongst themselves and, well, of course, that they have even within themselves, but maybe it is partially because they are confused. Maybe it is because they are brainwashed. They are being manipulated. Maybe it is because they themselves were in a narcissistic, toxic relationship with the media, the liberal media industrial complex, the whole time. But they didn't want out. They thought that it was a great relationship. They thought that the media thinking for them was nothing but fine and dandy, peaches and cream and rainbows, gumdrops and lollipops and sundrops. But I hate to tell you this, Puddin' Pop, but it wasn't. No, it never was. It never was. Because you were being brainwashed to believe something that was never true. All these years that we've seen the liberals and the left wing continuing to march down the street and scream "No King" and doing their "No King" protest, claiming it was peaceful. We know exactly what that was. They were following orders. They were following orders. Just like a bunch of good little liberals. Brainwashed little liberals. Ding, 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 marching down there. Because they were brainwashed. And this is what happens when you allow yourself to be used and abused. But maybe that doesn't have allegedly anything to do with why they're violent. Maybe it does. Who knows? Maybe it does have a lot to do with their habitual violent acts. But here's one thing that I will tell you. Their violence doesn't go unnoticed. Oh no, it doesn't. Everyone sees it. Everyone knows it. They claim that the MAGAs are the violent ones. That we're the bad people. That we're the bad guys. We're the bad people. We're the alleged schmazzies. We're the alleged fascists. But do you see us allegedly going out there, hurting people, allegedly shooting people, attacking people like they do? Or trying to silence people like they do? No. You know why? Because we don't do that. Because we, MAGA, are not like that. We, conservatives, we good conservatives, we good God-loving conservatives, no. That is not what God would want us to do, and that is not what we should do to anyone. Because we know one thing to be true. Violence is never the answer. Violence never is the answer to solving problems. Yes, we can defend ourselves allegedly when we have to, when the time is needed to allegedly defend ourselves, and it is the right time lawfully to defend ourselves, allegedly. But not to do it like how they allegedly do it. That is not lawfully. That is illegally done. And unjust. And uncalled for. And they know it. But you know why? Partially, they say some of this about us? Because they're mad because we are the bigger people. Sometimes when you notice that somebody's kind of mad at you, or you get hate for something, that probably obviously tells you that you're doing something right. If you're not doing anything wrong and you're doing everything right, you're not being violent, you're just using words, you're being peaceful, you're keeping yourself vigilant, and you're, watching your surroundings and knowing that, okay, this is happening, they're the ones over here doing this, but we're over here trying to keep the peace. We're just trying to help keep America better, safer, and we're being tolerant. We're not doing anything wrong. That tells you right there we're getting hate from these people because we're doing the right thing. They're in the wrong. They're jealous of us. They're jealous of us because they're evil. They're evil people. They're evil people. It's no longer Democrats versus Republicans, left versus right. It's good versus evil now. And as scary as it is to say it, it's true. Because I don't think that this is going to get better. Because here's where I'm gonna make this little pipeline truth drop on you. This is socialism 2.0. What the left are doing is socialism 2.0 on steroids. They claim it's not socialism. You know why? Because it's a blanketed word. It's a word that if they claim that it is, people will not get on board with it. They don't like to use that word because they know that if people are not going to get on board with it, they're not going to agree with it, they're going to think, oh, that's kind of an icky, ewy word, and too many people will leave, and they're going to look like a bunch of idiots. So they want people to agree with what they're doing. So Reagan said it best. Liberal socialism will come in the form of liberalism. And it is here, folks. Socialism 2.0 is here. And look at what we are dealing with now. Socialism 2.0. This is what we are dealing with. Socialism 2.0. Because if you look at the facts and the base of this all, how many people do you think would ever agree with socialism? Not anyone normal, in their right normal mind would ever say socialism works. Because anyone in their right mind would say, hell, socialism has never worked. Ever. Socialism has failed every time. Look at Mussolini. Look at Stalin. Look at Putin. Look at Kim Jong-un. Look at Xi Jinping. Look at all the socialist countries. They are failing and have failed or are failing. They're trying to bring socialism into our country by using violence, forcefully. That's what they're doing. That's why they're getting violent. Because at first, they were trying to do it by preaching it. And it didn't get really accepted. And they were like, okay, well, that didn't work. So now we got to go to plan B. So allegedly plan B is by allegedly bringing socialism 2.0 violently into our country. That's what's happening. That's why we are dealing with this shit now. Our country is fighting against socialism, but it's not really just about socialism. It's about evil. The root of evil. The demons, demonic entities that are trying to ruin our lives. That are really bad entities. And these people are demonic. They are demons. They are not people from God. They are demons from hell. You talk about God to them, they will hiss and quiver and run, or they will tell you F God. They will probably even say Hail Satan, because they hate God so much. Because that's how evil these people are. Because that's why they're so violent. Because they are godless. Because they are just like what communists were. Godless people. We know it to be true, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens when you allow a country to try to be overran with God's children and people that have God in their heart by a bunch of demons that hate God, that spite God, and that don't want God to try to run our country, that would rather allegedly unalive babies at high rates because they think it's health care, and rather continue to allegedly do acts of terrorism towards people, because that is the act of not of a God-loving type person, but a act of a godless person, or a godless, not a godless, just a godless person, but a demon, a demonic entity from Satan. Stay safe out there, folks, and may God bless you all.